Hi there. Welcome to Pallet University. I love technology. Technology is something that I've gotten into quite a lot in the last handful of years. Like this computer that I record on, I built myself. I built my brother-in-law a computer over the summer. And if you have been around the channel since the summer, you might remember this video here, where I basically shamelessly ask you for money to help with a tech-related sort of Pokemon project. So in that video, I asked for around $50, and I linked my PayPal account down below because I couldn't afford to do the project at the time. And one of my best good friends, who was one of the first friends that I made through the internet back when I still did my Let's Play channel, which is Nick. He uploads videos under the name PC Bloodmaster. He is the GOAT and donated $50 to me. So thank you so much, Nick. I thanked you on Twitter at the time, but I haven't made a video formally about it. So thank you so much. His link will be down below. If you like entertaining Let's Play content, definitely give him a look. Anyway, so in the video, I was purposefully kind of vague about what I was doing with this project. So now, 9 months later, I've learned a lot of things about what I was trying to do and why I was trying to do it really poorly. So I want to sort of enlighten you guys and maybe show you a really cool piece of technology that you might not know about. And that piece of technology is the Raspberry Pi. So this is the Raspberry Pi Zero. If you don't know what Raspberry Pi is, essentially it's a little computer. This is a full computer. It's very low powered, obviously, but they come in bigger sizes than this, but really no bigger than maybe like a wallet. Like this is probably about the size of the biggest one that they sell. And they don't work quite like normal computers. They have the same kind of processor that's in your phone, which doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but just how the processor works is actually really different. But there's so many things you can do with Raspberry Pi, and I actually got turned on by a video that a tech YouTuber that I watched made around the time, back in May, where he was flying on a really long plane trip, like over to Asia or something. It was gonna be like a 15-hour flight. So he decided to make himself a portable gaming system with a 7-inch monitor, and he just hooked up the Raspberry Pi to the back of the monitor and gamed on his flight, which I thought was really cool. And especially around the time I'd been on a big nostalgia kick, I had been wanting to get more into some of the older Pokemon games, because I think Sun and Moon had been announced around that time, or not Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield had been announced around that time, and I knew that you'd somehow be able to get Pokemon from the GBA games to these games. Home hadn't been announced yet, so I wasn't sure how, but I knew there was going to be a way. But unfortunately, my way of playing those games was not very good. I still do have some older gaming hardware, like I still have this Game Boy Color. It works great. It's, I feel like most people, I misplaced the backplate at some point in time. So I have to be careful when holding it so that I don't move around the batteries too much, but it still works completely fine. However, my Game Boy Advance does not. I also lost the backplate to this at some point in time. And unfortunately, this one does technically work. However, it's very glitchy. If you move the batteries even slightly, the system sort of basically just resets itself. And more often than not, it usually doesn't even read the game card. It's very old, and obviously, I was a kid. I got this. This is the first generation of them when they came out in, 2003? So this thing is over 15 years old. And, I played the heck out of it. So how this all started for me after I was I'm sort of leading you to my train of thought why I'm doing this thing with the Raspberry Pi. So I wanted to get back into it, right? And this was the only system that I had at the time that could play Game Boy Advance games. Now I have a DS Lite, the second version of DS that still could play Game Boy Advance games, but at the time I didn't. So I went on eBay, obviously, and was looking for a Game Boy Advance. And I wanted an Advance SP because I'd had one of those that the screen broke on that a long time ago. But I wanted another one, and those are very expensive on eBay. They can run anywhere from 50 to $75. I'm like, that's a little more than I want to spend right now. So I looked into getting another Game Boy Advance. And those you can get relatively cheaply, depending on where you find it on eBay. It can be anywhere from like $20 to $35, which isn't terrible. But then you get into the games. And while yes, I have the vast majority of Pokemon games, especially the early ones, there are a couple that I didn't have. And I wanted to complete the collection, you know, because that's just kind of the person I am. I like to collect things. Obviously, I play Pokemon. But with eBay, you never know what you're going to get. And GameStop typically doesn't carry, you know, that's the only like game retailer around me, especially now that I live in South Dakota. That's the only game retailer around me, and they don't typically carry things older than DS games, and even their DS collection is pretty sparse. So, you know, I can't really rely on them to have Pokemon Ruby or Fire Red and Leaf Green, which are the ones that I'm mostly missing. So I was like, there's got to be a cheaper way to be able to play these games without risking buying a counterfeit, because they're everywhere on eBay. And yeah, emulating them on a PC is fine. You know, that's what I did when I uploaded to that Let's Play channel. But there's just something about having it in your hands, something small, something with that, you know, kind of crappy screen that just is so nostalgic for me and made me really want to have that again. But I didn't want to spend a ton of money to buy those games, because the games can also be rather expensive if, you know, to be able to be sure that they are real. They can run you anywhere from like, you know, 25 to $50 for an actual genuine game for any of the games from Generation 1 through 3. And that's where this little guy comes in. So, granted, you won't be able to transfer Pokemon that you play from this because you're still emulating them. This is still a computer. But it does give you that handheld feel that I was really nostalgic for. So, my goal was to be able to turn this into a sort of retro gaming machine that you don't have to hook up to a monitor, that is self-contained, that's only very slightly bigger than this. This is roughly the size, it's a little bit smaller, but once you put the things on it that you need, it's roughly the same size as like a Game Boy Advance Micro, which are crazy expensive. Like, that's what I originally wanted before I moved down to the SP, and those go for like over $100 on eBay. And I'm like, yeah, that's way too much money. But there are so many things that you can do with this. Especially if you look around eBay, you can find a lot of really neat things. So that's what I did. I didn't really know where else to look, so I poked around eBay to see if I could find some things, and I was initially not disappointed. When it arrived, I was very disappointed. So I'm going to walk you through some of my mistakes, and then how I ended up getting to where I currently am, that I'm very happy with how this thing plays its games. When I say that the Raspberry Pi is a computer, you know, that's completely true. On this little tiny board, there is the CPU, which is under this little silver heatsink that I put on separately. It doesn't come with that. There's also some RAM. This model only has 1 gigabyte of RAM, which is pretty much all you need when you're only emulating things like Game Boy games. And then it's got an HDMI and a USB for power and a USB for like interface for like a flash drive or something. However, because it's so small, this is a micro, or a mini HDMI, sorry, and then micro USB ports, which is very important for things I'm going to talk about in a minute. And then you load up the operating system on just a normal micro SD card. And that's pretty much all you need. The first model that I bought was the Raspberry Pi Zero, just plain Zero. There are 3 different models. And that comes in very important later. So the first model is the cheapest. It's only $5. So a fully working computer for $5. Like, I was like, sign me up, man. However, there are some really important caveats to that. The Raspberry Pi Zero, which was this one, does not come with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and it also did not initially come with these sort of silvery pins that you see on there, or golden pins that you see on there, which is how it connects to a lot of other things. You have to put those on separately. So that's why it's $5. The next model up is $10, which is the Pi Zero W, which still doesn't come with these pins, but comes with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And then there's the Pi Zero WH. So the W stands for wireless, and the H stands for headers, which are what these are called. So the Zero WH comes with Wi-Fi and these headers already soldered on for $15. So initially I was like, oh, I'll save the money. You can buy the pins separately for like less than $1. So I was like, I'll do that. Soldering is not terribly hard. I'd done it for a couple of other things, nothing too precise though. So I was like, I can do it myself, save a bunch of money, and I'm not really going to need Wi-Fi or Bluetooth on this anyway, because I planned on buying a screen that just connects to these, and you just play it that way. Don't do that. Number one, soldering is actually harder than I thought, than I remembered. It'd been a while since I'd done it, and I did a really bad job, because you can't connect any of the pins on the back side of the board, otherwise it'll short itself out. So you have to be very precise in your soldering, and I am not. So it was a combination of me not being able to solder well, and also the solder that I was using was really thick. The wire was really thick, so it was just hard to get all the pins isolated from one another. So don't do that. Don't do that. But I did, and so I'll walk you through what I did after that, and the pieces that I bought after that you also should not buy. A lot of things on eBay are relatively cheap, especially for the Pi Zero. So like I got this case that it screws into the case, and then there's this hole in the top that lets you access those pins, the header. This was, I think, 99 cents on eBay. And I liked the color because it matched this guy, which was the screen that I had planned on using. It's got 3 buttons on the side. 3 buttons on the side here. And then a directional toggle stick. There's only up, down, left, right. There's no sort of 8-point movement. There's only 4-point movement. But for Pokemon games, you don't need that. You only need 4-point movement. And then the stick also pushes, so that's a 4th button. And in my mind, I'm like, that's all you need, really, for Pokemon is A, B, start, select, and then movement. Perfect. That's all you need. This was around $15 because this was, for the size, a pretty decent screen. I think it's 240 by 240 pixels. And I think it's like 1.4 inches or so across. There were some bigger ones, but they were lower resolution. And I thought this was a pretty good compromise between size and resolution. And it was only $15. So I bought it off eBay. But as it turns out, nothing with Raspberry Pi, I'll say almost nothing with Raspberry Pi is that simple. Because you can put, your own operating system on there, and there's all sorts of custom operating systems specifically for gaming. There's some specifically for robotics, which is really common use for Raspberry Pi as well. But they don't come with almost any, drivers. So, if I wanted to use this, I would have had to code the drivers into the Raspberry Pi myself. Yeah. Which, I've taken a programming class, but not in the kind of programming that this requires, and I did my best. I tried for probably 2 or 3 weeks working on it, maybe like an hour a day, and I could not get it. Could not get it at all. So, in retrospect, I should have known that because this cheap thing coming from China, that it would not have worked how I thought. But that's what I ended up going with, and it's still, to this day, I've still never gotten this to work. And that's the main reason why this video took so long to make, was because I didn't see another option. I didn't see another option for how to work this thing without, taking the time and learning how to code the driver to run this screen myself, which I, especially now that I'm in graduate school, do not have time to do. But recently, I came across another option that is significantly easier to use. The whole goal of me doing this project was to find a cheaper alternative to just buying a Game Boy Advance secondhand off of eBay, as well as all the games, which might be counterfeit anyway, to be able to play in like a handheld form, instead of emulating it either on your phone or emulating it on a computer. Which is why I went with the cheaper $5 version of this computer, as well as I went with the cheap case and the cheap-ish sort of screen. So these 3 things together cost me around $20. You might be thinking, well, Gavin, why'd you ask for $50 then? Well, because this doesn't have normal interface like most other things do. So if you wanted to connect this to a TV, you need to buy an adapter that connects this micro HDMI to a regular HDMI to hook up to a TV. Otherwise, you have no way to see what you're doing. So that in and of itself costs about $5. Okay, so I had my adapter to be able to connect this HDMI port to a TV, but then I realized, wait, these aren't normal USB ports, so I needed to buy an adapter to that, which is relatively cheap. That was like 50 cents. But then I realized that you can't power a normal keyboard with it because it doesn't have enough power output from the port to power my normal keyboard that I use for this computer. So then I had to buy this wireless keyboard that just plugs in with just like a normal like Bluetooth dongle. So this was about $16. So now we're basically up to about 50 bucks. Probably a little bit more by the time all things are, shipped and said and done. Also, as you might be able to see, there's no battery on this, so it needs some kind of power source. Typically, you plug it into a wall using just like a normal phone charger through one of these two micro USB ports on there. However, because I wanted it to be portable, I got one of these, just like a portable battery with a normal like USB out, and then I just got like a really short USB to micro USB cable to connect it. In theory, that's not super large to have in your hand. This is what it would have looked like, and then the screen would have been on top of here. So a little janky, I get that, but all things said and done, it wouldn't have been too bad to play on, and you would have got quite a bit of life out of this battery too. But if I can't get the screen to work, then the whole thing is just kind of shot, right? Well, until about a week ago, I thought so too, until I discovered the GamePi 20 from Waveshare. If you look around on eBay, you can find all sorts of really neat things for Raspberry Pis. A lot of like 3D printed custom cases that come with buttons, but they don't typically come with screens unless you buy them from this company, Waveshare. They make a lot of really neat stuff for both Raspberry Pi Zero as well as the bigger versions. This right here cost about, I think it was $25, and it came with everything you see right here. It comes with this case, these colorful buttons here, the screen, the top, as well as it's really nice. It comes with a battery, which is great, and it's rechargeable. And it still has access to all of the normal ports. You can plug it into the normal power slot. If you don't want to use the battery, you can still plug in a USB to it, and you can still use this to go to a TV, and then you can use this as like the controller to the TV. So like I said, this was $25 plus the Raspberry Pi that's in it. I used the one with the Wi-Fi and the headers are pre-soldered on. That one cost about $15. After I realized that I couldn't actually solder the other one, then I decided to buy this one. It's got Wi-Fi. I figured, why not? So right now, that is about $40 for this unit right here, and that's it. Now you need a an SD card for it to put the operating system and your games on. And that one, I got a 32 gigabyte one just because it was only like $10. You typically only need one that's about 16 gigs. But because on Waveshare's website, they have everything you need for this. I didn't need to program this screen. So I was like, that file that they use for that is, I think, like 14 gigabytes. So I just decided to go for the 32 gigabyte just to give myself some extra room. But the real question is, how does it play? Surprisingly, really well. There's one thing that you need to add to it that they don't include in order to be able to play the Game Boy Advance games like up to speed. And the link to all this stuff will be down in the description below. So if you want to do this project and want some help doing anything, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Pallet_U. And before anyone asks, no, I will not be giving out ROMs. It is illegal to play ROMs, to have ROMs of games that you do not own. That is illegal. Don't do that. I'm not saying to do that. I made sure that the only games on here are games that I personally own. Anyway, yeah, it comes with this nice on-off switch. And it has some LED lights at the top there to let you know how much battery life you have left. It's got a built-in speaker in the back. It's not the best speaker, but it's, not any worse than, the speaker that was on the Game Boy Advance to begin with. And once this gets booted up, I'll, quickly walk you through some of the games. Alright, so we're booting up Pokemon Emerald right now. And So far, my only complaint is that when you first start up a Game Boy Advance game, the Game Boy Color and regular Game Boy games work perfectly fine. Um, but the Game Boy Advance games lag a little bit when you first load them up. And as you can hear, it's not the cleanest audio, but it's still something. You know, it's better than it definitely could be. And it's playing the cutscene from Emerald quite well. You know, there's a bit of reflection on there, but it's a really nice screen. It's 60 hertz. It's an IPS screen, so you can view it from pretty much any angle, and it'll still look pretty solid. It is, I think, 360 by 240 pixels, which is surprising given how small it is. And so far, the only other complaints that I've been able to find is if you see, there's a little bit of a sort of wave motion that's not normally otherwise there when you're changing screens. It sort of like cascades across the screen, which is a little bit annoying, and there's a little bit of screen tearing when you move around, but you kind of get used to it. But the other biggest complaint that I found is that you can't remap the buttons. It comes preset with the operating system that they provide on their website. Yeah, it comes preset, which is kind of annoying because the A and B buttons are mapped backwards for how Nintendo systems are set up. And I get Nintendo does most things differently than a lot of other systems do. But for me personally, just not being able to remap those is really annoying. But it's something that I just changed which button was where, and I'm just going to have to get used to it. But it runs these games fantastically well. And a big advantage that I think this has over buying a Game Boy Advance secondhand off of eBay and all the games is that you can do randomizers on this. You can do full randomizers of these, Game Boy Advance and earlier games. So right now, loaded up on this, I have a randomizer of yellow, crystal, emerald, in addition to all the regular, like, plain ones. And also, I have Mystery Dungeon on here, just because I love that game. And I also have a copy of Red 721, which is a randomizer that includes 250 Pokemon from generations 1 through 6. Randomly, it just randomly picks 250, either 250 or 251, I don't quite remember. Yeah, it's got this handy on-off switch, which is really nice. The back is made out of metal, which was actually really surprising to me. I thought that it would be made out of kind of like cheapo plastic, but it actually does a really good job of dissipating some of the heat that this gives off, because it is, like I said, a full computer. Overall, I'm very, very happy with this, and I'm obviously, not, affiliated or sponsored by any of these products. But if you want to do this project, the link to it will be down in the description below. If you need any help with setup or anything, feel free to let me know. Because I feel like this is a really neat thing. Next time I fly home, this is definitely coming with me on the plane. It's the built-in battery has got about, I think, roughly like 3 or 4 hours of battery life in it. I'm sure it'll use it faster if you're using playing Game Boy Advance games than it will if you're using Game Boy games, just because those are more demanding and make the processor work harder, so it uses more power. Overall, I'm just really happy that I got to do something with this project, because I felt so bad that for the last 9 months that Nick was kind enough and generous enough to basically just give me this free money way back in May, and I bought these things and never got the chance to make a video about it because I couldn't figure out how to make the dang thing work. And I ended up spending a lot more money than the $50 I asked for originally. But overall, I think it's worth it because I'm very, very happy with this. And you can also use this to play games from lots of other systems. Like, this will play Super Nintendo games. You could put the old school Mario Brothers games on here. Probably, depending on the title and how demanding it is, you probably could play a PlayStation 1 game on this. I might actually try that out because I do have a PlayStation ROM on my computer. I might try that out actually, and I'll let you know on Twitter how that goes, or maybe I'll pin a comment down below. Yeah, overall, very, very happy with this product. And the only downsides, like I said, is that the button is mismatched, and that you cannot, like I said at the very beginning, transfer your Pokemon from this to Sword and Shield without using things like PK Hex and all that stuff. That's not sanctioned. Anyway, I know this is not our typical kind of video, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I know I enjoy working with technology a lot, so hopefully you guys just enjoy my enjoyment. I don't know, that's kind of the whole point of being a content creator, is you get to make the things that you want to make. And while usually I do love making content about Pokemon, and specifically we're in the middle of our series about fossil Pokemon, and I love that series, but I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I'm glad that it finally all sort of came together. With that, I want to say thank you so much for watching. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Pallet_U to keep up on all things Pokemon science, as well as we do have a Patreon if you think that this content is worthy of supporting, the link to which will be down below. And as always, there's a time and place for everything.